Hello, and welcome to our weekly dialogue with Helga Zepp-LaRouche. She is the founder and chairwoman of the Schiller Institute. Today is September 3rd, 2025. I'm Harley Schlanger, and I'll be your host. You can email your questions and comments to Helga directly at questions@schillerinstitute.org, or you can post them on the chat page at YouTube. Now, Helga, as you emphasized last week, we're in the midst of an intense round of diplomatic activity, which, as Chinese President Xi Jinping has characterized it, he said that we're ushering in a new era. And this is a decisive change which has been building for some time. You've been there since the beginning of this, you and your husband. You forecast this was coming. You put forward all sorts of ideas for it. So I think it's best to start with your summary of what happened at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting and then go from there through the other events coming up.
Well, I think people should be very, very happy because, a new world economic and world order is emerging and has actually emerged, which, will mean a way out for every part of the world, including the United States, including Europe, even if people may not realize that yet. But what has emerged between the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit and this morning, actually, the military parade in Beijing, I would like to start actually with that because I watched not the whole thing because it was many hours, but I watched good segments. And I must say, this was the biggest military parade in history ever. It was so big, for example, Xi Jinping was driving with his car in an open car, standing there along the different troop formations, the different weapon systems for about, I guess it was 20 minutes at the speed of 20 kilometers. So you can imagine how big this was. And, if you look at the military parade of the troops, it was more like a ballet choreographed to the last details. And I must really applaud the TV crew because they were filming all of that in lifetime with a similar accuracy of a ballet. I mean, I know that there will be a lot of people who will be completely freaked out and say, "What? This biggest military parade?" Xi Jinping says he's for peace, and then he has such a big military parade. But I think that the message which goes with it is, that this is to safeguard peace. And, if you look at it together with the new economic order, which is emerging with the SCO meeting, which, represented almost half of the world population. And it is open, absolutely open to the Western countries to cooperate. It deliberately is not meant as a bloc. I think this is extremely important because it is actually the realization of a new system of international relations. President Xi Jinping has just added to his three global initiatives a fourth one, namely a global governance initiative, which is supposed to, work on improving the world governance system. And, the cooperation among the different countries is also now establishing a new banking facility to issue credit for infrastructure development in the developing countries. So I think this is an absolute breakthrough. And I could only urge my viewers, namely you, do not look at it with the lens of the mainstream media and lens of the, sort of propaganda of the past. This is truly a new era of mankind. And I think that if we get, a positive attitude to it and stop geopolitics and just say we cooperate as equals with this new system, we can solve the war danger, we can solve the economic crisis, we can even solve the bankrupt financial system of the West, we can solve the situation in the Middle East in Ukraine. And I can only say this is a day for every human being of goodwill to be not only happy, but to be exuberant. This is a breakthrough for all of mankind. And, I can only say this is, this is really good news. So that's my initial comment.
Well, the parade itself was to celebrate the end 80 years ago of the fighting in World War II in Asia. Now, we were allies. The United States were allied with China in that war. And there were invitations for the United States to participate in the parade. Do you have any report on whether there were official American representatives in Beijing for the parade?
I don't know. Unfortunately,
Trump.
President Trump did not go, even if we made a whole huge campaign, collecting signatures, appealing to him, appealing to President Xi Jinping to invite Trump. He did not go, as he did not go to the the celebrations of the end of World War II in Moscow in May. I think it would have been fantastic if Trump would have gone there. And, I think he put out a statement on his Truth Social, which the first couple of lines were quite horrible because they said, oh, given the fact that you had President Xi Jinping with President Putin as the guest of honor on one side and President Kim Jong-un from North Korea on the other side. So Trump's initial post was, that these three are conspiring against the United States. But then when you read the whole text, he actually expressed very good wishes and congratulations to Xi Jinping and also to Putin. So, I think it is still absolutely undecided, how President Trump will relate to all of that. And I must say it is very important that the Russians make a very clear effort to pull the United States into this development. There was a statement by Kirill Dmitriev, who was in the delegation in the Anchorage summit together with Trump, where he said, that basically they want Russia, China, US projects working together in developing energy and other resources in the Arctic region. And, given the vast potential of the development of the Arctic, I think this is something which has a very good chance to happen. Now, we will have also today the beginning of the Vladivostok East Economic Summit, where I don't have yet any reports. But, there more than 6,000 firms will be from, I think, 35 or more countries. And there I know that there will be a lot of US delegations. And I can only say if the United States would basically, respond positively to this offer of joint US, China, Russian development projects in the Far East, this would be the best basis for peace. And, it would simply mean that anybody who is still of the eternal yesterday faction, and unfortunately I have to refer to one person in Germany who definitely belongs to that, they would realize that they are completely isolated and self-isolated if they don't join that. So I think this is, I expect that a lot will happen at this Vladivostok meeting, because, this is sort of the natural follow-up of the Anchorage meeting. And I think you should all really stay tuned, because what we are experiencing right now is the emergence of a new era of humanity. And, this is creating the options to solve all problems, including economic problems in the United States and in Europe. And it does require a lot of people helping to make that new system happen, so that it also affects the Western countries.
We're listening to Helga Zepp-LaRouche, the chairwoman of the Schiller Institute. And you can still send some questions and comments if you have them for her. Now, Helga, you mentioned the potential optimism coming from this, that you have, I don't know, 20 or 30 heads of state were at the SCO meeting. You have more of them, businesses from all over the world at Vladivostok. And yet the media coverage in the West is so snooty and degrading, saying that, for example, the BBC and the Financial Times, that the military parade in Beijing is a warning to the West. Now, they're saying this at a point at which the leaders of the European countries, the major European countries, are running around cheering on a war buildup against Russia. Do they not see the ironies in this? And do they think that people are just too stupid to figure it out?
Well, I think this will not last for long because, I think the reality of this new global majority going in a completely different direction, peaceful, based on the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence and the UN Charter, explicitly non-block building. I mean, they do not build a counter block to the West, but they're saying we are open for cooperation for anybody who wants to join us. And given the fact that the attractiveness of this model, which naturally rests very much on the rise of China, the fact that China is now de facto, I mean, in many statistics and also my personal observation, I think China is the number one, because if you look at the incredible modernization of all aspects of cities, of infrastructure, of breakthroughs, of the leadership of China in many modern advanced technologies, naturally, China has offered that kind of development to all countries who are participating in the Belt and Road Initiative. And, that system has simply proven more attractive than the interventionist wars conducted by NATO. If you compare the momentum which is coming towards this new, BRICS, the SCO, this new system, and compare that to the misery which was spread by the wars, interventionist wars in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Syria, in Lebanon, Libya. I mean, it's so obvious which model has won out. And that is a truth which cannot be suppressed. Look at the fact that, due to the efforts of President Trump, you have now a rapprochement between India and China. Prime Minister Modi was in Tianjin at the SCO meeting and had very good discussions with Xi Jinping. And the two leaders expressed the importance of China and India working together. Now, that is what was not supposed to happen, and also President Putin and Modi, Prime Minister Modi, went along, you could see them in discussion, holding hands. And the Western media was, they had hyperventilation crises, one after the other, saying they were holding hands. Now, I find this all very, very funny and very amusing, and it's actually good. Why would anybody in their right mind not be happy if the two largest countries on the planet, China and India, who together represent 35% of the world population, just two countries, 35% of the world population, if they get along well, I mean, that should be cause for happiness. Then if you add Russia to that combination, you have quite a power in terms of military power, economic power, population, and resources. So if these are offering to the West to cooperate, I think that, the word will spread. And, already Robert Fico, the Prime Minister of Slovakia, he participated in the parade. And, he said that the Europeans are like a toad, a frog sitting at the bottom of a fountain or of a well. Yeah, and then they look up and they only can see a little bit light on top, but they can't see anything, what's going on. And he compared the Europeans with such a frog. And that is exactly what it is. And I'm, I don't want to be super, euphoric, but I'm so absolutely certain that the news cannot be suppressed. And I, for the first time, heard this morning in Deutschland Radio an expert who is a famous China expert and so forth. And he said for the first time that what is happening with this new order is a reality where the West eventually will have to adapt to. And I think that will be the wind, the coming wind. And so if the eternal yesterday faction like the BBC is not yet on board, too bad for them.
Well, there's a question from a former elected official from an Eastern European country who's been following what you've been writing and doing with your mobilization. And what she asked is, what could you say to someone like Macron if you had a chance to talk to him about how silly it is that they're operating from the standpoint that Putin is about to attack Europe? How could you convince someone like Macron that this is foolishness?
I would tell Macron to listen to some of his own military, because many of the French military have stated, and including German military and other military like Italian military, that there is absolutely no motive for Russia to attack Europe. I mean, I have said this in the past, but Russia is a huge country of 11 time zone. They have a population which is really, a little bit small to occupy and secure such a huge territory. They have no motive. They have all the resources in their own country. They have what would be the reason why they would occupy countries in Europe where they would have to assume that the population would be hostile to them, that all they would earn is, rundown economies. It just does not make sense. They don't have the military force to occupy more. I mean, you see how, the argumentation of the West is not even logical, because, on the one side, they say, see, Russia is not capable of winning the war in Ukraine. It took them 3 years to just gain such a small part of Ukraine. Now, why would you assume that Russia would have the forces to occupy more European countries when the entire military expenditures of NATO are, I think, in order of magnitude higher than that of Russia, when they don't have the manpower to do so, and they don't have and Putin just the other day stated again, just for the record, that Russia has no other objective than to defend its own interest from a security standpoint. And I think that's exactly what the situation is. And Macron probably should listen to, the people who are competent military experts, and not go to Great Britain and listen to Starmer and British, and, because there the advice will be a very bad one.
Now, the other aspect of the diplomatic activity is focused on Southwest Asia, with the convening of the UN General Assembly next week in New York. There's a motion to adopt a Uniting for Peace, a resolution to move to end the fighting outside of the Security Council to avoid the veto from the US. So the question came in from several people: does the UN actually have the power to stop Israel from committing genocide? And related to that is the question, why would Trump meet with Tony Blair, given Blair's record?
Because he has a problematic son-in-law named Jared Kushner, who is of the same mindset like Blair. And, that's really the worst which could have happened. And the re-emerging of this absolutely disgusting and cynical Riviera Gaza plan, which is, it's like adding the worst kind of, insult to injury. of a genocide going on now for almost 2 years. I mean, this is just totally disgusting. I mean, I think Blair, eventually these people should be put on trial for what they are doing and not, not have the right to run around like that and propose such totally disgusting plans. I think the Uniting for Peace resolution has a good chance to be adopted by the UN General Assembly. Basically, I think the only way how it could function is, I mean, the vast majority of all countries in the world is already, absolutely disgusted at what has happened in Gaza. And if you had such a motion right now where, the UN General Assembly would adopt a combination of different measures, weapons embargo, trade cut-off, isolating any financial dealings with Israel, putting there a blue helmet troops, I think the combination of all of that would make clear to the population inside Israel that Israel is completely isolated in the whole world with very, very few pockets of exception. And I think that would tilt the situation because, Israel has to consider that, if they surround themselves with countries and peoples who are their mortal enemy, it may last for months, it may even last for a year, but I mean, it puts into harsh question the existence of Israel by their own doing. And on the other side, if there is a solution offered, what we are trying to do to make the Uniting for Peace resolution not only a two-state solution, naturally immediate humanitarian aid without any hindering, but at the same time, developing the entire region, not only the reconstruction of Gaza, but as part of the entire region with the Oasis plan, that is the idea to create large amounts of new fresh water to green the deserts, you could shift the whole situation. Now, obviously, blue helmets cannot start fighting against the IDF, and they may not be able to stop the IDF this way, but I think one could create an international awareness of the situation there through such a motion, because if 190 countries would all, make clear that they completely disagree with what Israel is doing, and that would be in all the TV channels, in all the news programs, I think you could change the situation.
Now, there's a question from a regular viewer from Canada who said, and we can take this for her own view, but she says, we don't really have a deep state in Canada. We're just a puppet of the City of London. But she goes on to say, I haven't heard much from Gabbard recently. Is she still on the case? Is there still an investigation going on into the Russiagate? Because this is necessary if you're going to be able to outflank the pro-war faction in Washington.
Yeah, she did some follow-up. She, I think there is a criminal investigation now on the basis of the documents she released. I agree, one could hear more of it, but I think so far we have at least I don't have any indication that she is lessening her efforts.
And of course, we did a white paper that's available that goes through how the investigation should proceed beyond the obvious suspects like Brennan and Clapper, and look at the British impetus for the Russiagate in the beginning. You can get that through our website. Now, Helga, there are two more questions. One is more philosophical, so I'll save that. But there's another one on the economic crisis. And someone wrote in and said that the LaRouche organization is known for its economic analysis. What is your sense today? Do you really think that the tariff policy is going to bring in enough money to solve the deficit? Or is this just more politicking to try and stay in power and keep the money flowing into the banks?
I think the tariff policy is a bomb. It's a fuse, lighting the entire bankrupt financial system with 2 quadrillion derivative and debt, which is a bubble. And the tariffs could cause in the short term a whole series of bankruptcies, of involuntary insolvencies, of bankruptcies, and in combination with the crypto policy, I think President Trump is very ill-advised with this cryptocurrency because, I mean, obviously he's concerned about the de-dollarization, but there is no bigger de-dollarization than the crypto. It's the creation of a gigantic new liquidity bubble, obviously in the hope to bail out the system this way. But I think that there is a very important new article by our EIR editor for Latin America, and I could also say economics, Dennis Small. It is a very important article which you should read. It's called What the BRICS Countries Should Do Now. And I can say they are actually doing it to a very large extent, because they have now created a new development bank, which for the first time is issuing credit in non-dollar denominations, simply based on the national currencies of the participating countries. And that may actually become an anchor of safety, because the biggest Damocles sword hanging over civilization is this bubble. And if it would come to an uncontrolled collapse, it would lead to a that could really blow the whole world into a catastrophe, including ending up in World War III. So I think that the measures which Dennis Small repeats, which are really the original ideas of Lyndon LaRouche and his 4 laws, that needs to be absolutely put on the agenda. So please look at this article.
Now, here's the philosophical question from someone who grew up in South Africa and now lives in the Cameroons and has been following us very closely. And she said she has a question for you about how to achieve reconciliation. She said, we're finding it's very difficult to get this concept accepted in South Africa, even with the example set by Mandela. There's just so much division and hatred and no simple solution. So here's my question for you. Which comes first? Should you fight for the philosophical acceptance of the ideas about human beings that are in your fundamental principle paper, or should you deliver the goods first? That is, the economic benefits from cooperation, or can they be done together in this world? So there's the question for you.
Well, I think the key to this is the concept of peace through development. I mean, obviously, if you have hardcore criminals, there needs to be a system of justice where you have to, punish those who committed these crimes. But I think that the only model is really that you have to bridge conflict through development. And in the recent period, I think that there was only one country which successfully approached crisis this way, and that was China. They have been able to mediate the conflict between the Sunnis and the Shiites, or Iran and Saudi Arabia, arch enemies for a very long time, who are now cooperating. The more recent example is that through the idea of economic development, they were able to at least, lessen the conflict between Pakistan and Afghanistan through economic development, through the potential extension of the CPEC corridor to Afghanistan and linking it up with the other Central Asian countries. And whatever you do, there has to be always a perspective of joint development for the benefit of all participating countries and parties, because you have to change the environment. You have to have a perspective to the future. And while sometimes you have to look at the past, you have to think what is the just settling of conflicts. But if you don't if you only stay in the past, and if you only say you did this to me and therefore I did this to you, and this has to be balanced and we have to live with this, there is no way out. You have to always have a perspective of future generations. You have to always start with, how would you want to have humanity live in 100 years from now, or the next generation? Do you want them to have in a perpetual guilt and punishment and guilt and punishment? I think we have to really look at the one humanity. And the reason why I'm so really optimistic about what happened in Tianjin in China, and the whole process going on with the BRICS and the SCO and the emergence of this new era, is because you have for the first time the idea of the shared humanity. This is a conception by Xi Jinping. He said we have to have a shared community of the one humanity, or the one future of humanity. And that is the mental jump we have to make. Because if you start with that we are one humankind, and that we have more in common and more common interest than that what divides us, namely that we are the creative species, the only one known in the universe so far, and that we can relate to the creative identity of each other. And if we work on that and actualize that creativity, we can produce anything. There is no limits in terms of what mankind can do in terms of composition of music, poetry, economics, science, conquering space through space research and travel. I mean, thermonuclear fusion. There is no limit. Just think that the present condition of mankind is the result of only a few thousand years, when we started to really get serious about development. Now, I hope that mankind will be around for, forever. We are the immortal species. And wouldn't you think that, when we perfect every science, that we, improve medicine so that longevity becomes longer, that we will be healthy, getting much older, that we can study much longer, that we can devote our lives and efforts to improving self-perfection, self-cultivation, aesthetic education. I mean, I think we are really only, maybe we are toddlers, or maybe we are still in the baby age, but we are far from being adult as a human species. So I think we have to start with a positive image where mankind can go, and then try to sort out conflicts from that standpoint of the future in the present. And therefore, I think, that is also the approach one has to take to, overcome all problems in the present, including, things which were really very, very bad.
Well, you've certainly played a role in providing a perspective for the future based on the work you did first with your husband, and now since his passing that you've continued. And that's reflected in the work of the International Peace Coalition, which will be meeting again this week. What can you tell us about the plans for this Friday's meeting?
Well, we will have several speakers from this Southwest Asia, because obviously the month of September will be the UN General Assembly, and we want to mobilize everything, every country, every force for the UN resolution Uniting for Peace 377. So we will have several speakers there on that topic, from Israel, from Palestine, from the region. And naturally, we will hopefully have some major Chinese speaker commenting on the result of the SCO and the present new situation. So you absolutely have to participate in it, because the IPC meeting has become the place where every week you find from top experts from the relevant regions what you will not hear from the radio or the TV of the mainstream media. So please participate and help us to make the IPC larger and larger until we are the dominant force fighting for peace.
And you can register for this week's session at the Schiller Institute website. And it's going to be 11 a.m. Eastern Time on Friday. Any final thoughts, Helga? I know this is quite an emotionally charged week with these developments. How are you handling it?
Well, I think that I have been fighting for my whole life, or almost my whole life, starting very young, for this to happen. A new world economic order which would allow every country on the planet to fulfill their potential. And I think we have made a major breakthrough. I think this is really a new era. It's a break, because it was building up as a potential for a very long time, but now it's there, and it can only be increased. So I think it's something for people who have not been working on that for as long as I did and you did, Harley. I think it's important to keep an open mind and make yourself familiar with it, and don't go by prejudices you may have accumulated from whatever sources. To look at it, because this is the ray of hope for all of humanity, and we have to make sure it reaches into Europe and in the United States, and that they participate.
And we definitely need a ray of hope in Europe. Okay, well, Helga, thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you on Friday.
Yes, till Friday.